Today is May 14th, the year 2025, and I'm out here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania to see the illustrious author and Western PA hoops great, Damon Young. Now, it is true that Damon is the only author that has hosted me so far for Books on the Bed that could give me that work on the basketball court. That is 100% a fact, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. I did think that I would be the best basketball player involved in this forever, but all reigns must come to an end. And for me, it is today, and it is here. But that's okay. And I'm sure we're going to talk about hoops, at least a little bit, and some of our strange random connections within the hoops world, which is going to be really fun because I don't get to talk about hoops with anybody else, really, at least not in depth like I think we will today. So that's going to be really fun. But I am mostly here because Damon is coming out with an incredible book on June 3rd titled That's How They Get You, an Unruly Anthology of Black American Humor. This is a collection of more than 20 of the most important Black writers living today. And this is one of those books that is not what you expect it to be, because it didn't have you in mind. And I love books like this because they defy expectations. They don't try to meet some arbitrary standard placed upon them. They're just honest works of art that go on their own way. And what you get in the end is something that is lasting and real. And I can't say enough good things about this book. It plays with form in such a way that I love, where it's like, forget what you think about what a book should be. This is what we're going to do. And as I was reading this, I was thinking about another one of my favorite books, a memoir by Therese Marie Mayotte called Heartberries. And she's an indigenous author from Seabird Island in British Columbia. And I remember reading something in an article where she said before she wrote this incredible book, she felt like she was trying to write what her professors wanted her to write. And I think you could use any number of nouns in place of professors, but it's the weight of those expectations and feeling like you do have to live up to some random standard that prevents you from being self-honest and writing the best story and the most true story that you can write. And when she finally shed those expectations, she got to Heartberries. And that's when I reached out to her and I told her, this is an incredible book. And it's because it doesn't feel like any other book I've read, because it's yours. But coming back to Damon and this anthology, that's why I love this book so much, is it gave me the same feeling as Heartberries, where you could just tell that this was more than 20 authors coming together, no expectations, no weight, just letting it rip. And what you get is a hilarious, beautiful, powerful book that you will remember forever. And on the same wave of that self-honesty that is in That's How They Get You, I'd be willing to bet that whatever books Damon chooses for Books on the Bed have not been shared by any other author. Because I just think he's a unique individual with a really unique voice, and I think that'll be reflected in the choices. So I'm really excited to talk about those with Damon. But I'm about to head over to Damon's now. Pray for my brakes and my sanity driving in this blessed city. And I hope you enjoy the conversation. You're listening to Books on the Bed, where I travel through the country asking our hosts, if I came to your town and stayed at your house, what books would you put on my bed? Each host will share 6 books for me to carry with me on the journey of my life. And I'm here to share those books with you. As we go, we're building a digital library with every book put on every bed across the country. And who knows, maybe someday, the world. We are trying to share as many diverse stories as possible to part a curtain between us and bring us closer to each other. We hope these books and conversations make a meaningful difference in your life. Thank you for listening and being with us on this journey. And then Western North Carolina, where I live, I was on the very, very far western tip of that storm, Helene.
Okay.
So my county did not get hit hard, but everything else was brutal.
Wow.
So, and then we had an earthquake 4 days ago.
I didn't even know that. Wow.
We're in my house, me and my brother and sister-in-law, things start shaking and I have no idea what's going on. We were like, is something going to, like, is the heater going to blow up? I was like, no, wait, this is rumbling like this. Maybe an airplane flew too low because sometimes that happens, but it was so intense. And then come to find out, Maryville, Tennessee, on the other side of the Smoky Mountains was where the earthquake was, and it rocked us that hard. Oh, wow. So it was pretty nuts. Yeah. Wow. And then yesterday, if you want to know how excited, if you want to know how excited I was to be here, I did not just drive through, I drove in and with an atmospheric river.
Okay.
Which normally happens in California, but it was literally right on my path of the drive.
What's an atmospheric river?
I think it's just like in a really intense, narrow storm that typically generates in the Pacific Ocean, and it came through the Gulf. So I kid you not, there was a stretch of West Virginia that I was like, I don't know how I didn't hydroplane or get struck by lightning. It was just crazy.
So I'm a bit of a I'm a weather nerd, right? Like weather. I have stories about or I got caught in a really bad thunderstorm when I was like 6 years old. You know, wind, rain, hail, lightning, all that stuff. And from that point on, I wanted to learn as much about the weather as I possibly could. That was my way of, kind of processing that. So I would watch the Weather Channel all the time. 8 years old, watching the Weather Channel. My dad would buy me the USA Today's because, USA Today has a color-coded weather map of the whole country.
That's
on the
right.
back page of the A section, right? And I would get all the, my parents would buy me all the almanacs, all of the Guinness books, so I would know all the weather records.
So you were in it.
Yeah. And I could still tell you, like, weird, random, esoteric weather facts, like the most, the Tri-State tornado is still the deadliest tornado in world history, not just American history.
Wow.
I could, cumulonimbus, cirrus stratus, I could tell you different cloud formations or whatever. But I've never heard of an atmospheric river.
There we go. And it was so rare in this part of the country. And the one morning I had to leave, I had to drive.
I got to Google this.
Yeah, Google it. It's crazy. I knew that a couple of years ago it hit my parents in Southern California, or at least near there. And then I was like, oh, it's coming for us right after Helene, 6-7 months later. And I was like, I really hope this does not get the 12 inches of rain that they say it might. So I thought I was protected from severe weather in Southern Appalachia because of the mountains. And apparently I'm not.
So basically it's just like a wall of water that you see. And everywhere else might be fine, but you can actually physically see. Yeah, okay.
I could not have been more dead center on that drive.
Okay.
And so there was a 2-hour period where I was going like 45 miles an hour. Okay. And even then I felt like I was going too fast because I have a Corolla and like a lot of miles on it and my tires are probably going bald. So I was really nervous about hydroplaning, and some of those semis were still going like 80 through there. Wow. So it was a lot, but I got to come here. So,
okay, well, you made it.
So it was worth it. But like I said, on the way or when we got in, this book was really cool.
Thank you.
I didn't have a ton of time because I had family, friends, Airbnb guests in for like the last month. And I had these precious few hours in the early morning. And it takes a lot for me to laugh out loud reading a book. And I was waking people up. There were so many parts of this book that were just so damn funny. I couldn't not. And that's when you know that it's good. Not that I'm the barometer of laughter, but I'm a hard laugh. So the president's text chain, the presidents of black names, like I showed that to my brother and he was the same. He's like, this is amazing. So yeah, you really put together a special thing.
What you just said about being a hard laugh, there's a bit that Pete Holmes has about that. I'll share it with you. It's actually pretty funny. Okay. It's like, I'm a hard, he does a whole.
It sounds so arrogant to say.
No, he makes fun of that. He makes fun of that. But I like Pete Holmes a lot, and this is a really fun.
Okay, cool.
So I'll send it to you.
I'm in safe company here.
Yeah.
So before we get started talking about the book and your book's on the bed, what I do for every interview for authors that have made my life and other people's better and more full with their work is I give you gifts.
Oh, thank you.
I went overboard because there were so many dozens of books that I could have given you. That's the problem when you write so much about culture. I was like, oh man, he also thinks You God sucks. Like I could get him something with hip hop, but I tried to narrow it down to people that you probably haven't read.
Okay.
But maybe, and it would be a good thing if you had. So I want to start with those, and you can open them up so we can talk about those.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's see what's first. Okay. Okay. I am not familiar with this.
So Good Women by Hallie Hill.
Okay, Hallie Hill. I see Disha blurbed it.
She's not even low-key funny. She is low-key because she's so soft-spoken and chill, but she is so darkly funny.
Okay.
And this book hit me like a ton of bricks. I'd never heard of Hallie. I moved to North Carolina, Western North Carolina, and she's from East Tennessee, so Appalachian writer. And her name was everywhere on like the local bookstore page. And I was like, who is this Hallie Hill? And this collection is just so incredible. And I think you're really going to love it. It'll resonate.
Thank you. I was not just an author, but a Black author who I'm not familiar with. That's rare.
Well, and if you want the sister book to that I almost got you with it. She's not Appalachian, but she's a Black author from Louisville, Kristen Gentry.
Okay.
Wrote an awesome story collection called Mama Said. And they did an event together at our bookstore a few months ago. Oh, yeah, here's another one. Another Louisville. And now Berea, Kentucky.
Okay.
That picture of Bernard on the back it sold me. I didn't even need to know anything else with the lawnmower. English lit, Bernard Clay. These poems are going to feel familiar for you.
Okay.
And I think that you and him would be friends if you ever met.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for this. You said Berea. Is he, I actually visited Berea back in 2018, I want to say, 2017 or 2018. Had like a conversation with Belle Hooks. She had, I guess, gotten wind of a couple things I'd written and wanted to meet me, and so I flew out there, and we had like we went to dinner, and then we had like a conversation with like 30 people, just me and her, and then like some of her students and some community members just talking about stuff.
Man, that's special.
Yeah.
Yeah. She put Berea on the map, I feel like. Because then, Crystal Wilkinson was there.
Yeah.
Silas House. I don't know if you're familiar with his novels.
Mm-mm.
He's the poet laureate of Kentucky right now. Okay. He was one of the first openly gay authors to write queer stories in Kentucky, and to now be the poet laureate. That's a big deal. So there's just a concentration of writers in Kentucky that I've become just fallen in love with, and I'm glad that I've been able to become friends with some of them.
Yeah, one of my good friends in the Anthology, Sada Grundy, is from Kentucky.
Yep.
And it's she's in Boston now, but she's very much a Kentucky girl.
Yeah, there's something in Kentucky. It doesn't matter what part of the state. Mm-hmm. It's almost like an embarrassment of riches with the writers that they have.
Oh, and Joy, are you familiar with Joy Priest? Yeah, and she lives right. She lives. I could probably see her house from here. Yeah.
Why is it? How did I not know that Pittsburgh had this many writers?
Well, she moved to Pittsburgh. She teaches at University of Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And she runs the CAP program, which is the Center for African American Poetry and Poetics.
Oh,
it was founded by Terrence Hayes and what's her name, Dawn Lundy. And so now, yeah, and Joy and I have become friends.
You got to. That's so cool. Because also, is Angie Cruz still here? Does she still teach?
Yep. And Angie does a lot of work with CAP, and I see Angie all the time. Yeah. Yeah,
me and Elizabeth Gonzalez James were talking about how just incredible of a writer she is. And when I found out she taught here, I was like, what?
I mean, you think about some of the people who have come through Pittsburgh or either have taught here or lived here. I mean, Brian Broom is another one. Disha is another one. Just named Joy, Terrence, Yona Harvey.
Yeah.
Angie Cruz, Lorena Vila, who, is younger. She's from the Bronx. She got her MFA at Pitt and, had a tremendous novel that she released a couple years ago and is working on something now.
I haven't read her. So I got
she's someone I actually wasn't familiar with her, even though she got her MFA at Pitt, but she was a guest on my podcast. Like the people booked, our booking agency booked her or whatever. And that was, it's like, oh, what, you're at Pitt? Really?
Man.
And so that's another person, Toy Derricott, who, iconic poet. Yeah. I mean, and obviously, you go back, you definitely have your August Wilson. And so city does have a pretty robust legacy, history, and also community of writers, of Black writers. There's Tahara Walker too, who's at Point Park, who's, a tremendous writer and thinker. And I feel like I'm leaving people out. I'm probably forgetting people.
Yeah,
right
I mean, it's
now.
that many.
Yeah.
I was trying to think too. As I was counting them up, I was like, yeah, I could do 3 whole seasons of Pittsburgh or Pittsburgh affiliated
You just come back,
writers. And it was just so cool to get this together, because not only had I not been back in Pittsburgh since my parents moved, this is the 12th state for Books on the Bed.
Okay.
So we're moving. And to have you on the podcast and come back is really special. So let's get book number 3, because this one's very different.
Let's see.
Than the other 2. And it's because of one of your interests. Well, really, the big part of your identity early in life.
Basketball? Is this a basketball book?
Yeah, but it's not what you think.
Okay, now this is a book I've heard of.
Okay.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Oh,
This is. Yep.
So I figured, because of the basketball background, I was like, I don't want to get something that's been like a bestseller basketball type of memoir, whatever. And there's a really great book in Cherokee, North Carolina, called Talking Leaves. It's all indigenous authors, hundreds and hundreds of books. And I'd been eyeing this for myself for a while and got it. And then when I knew I was coming up here with you, I was like, okay, I'm going to get that as one of the gifts as well. So Native Hoops. I'm blanking on the author's name.
Wade Davies.
Yeah, who's out in Montana. And I was like, this is just such a cool book. And history books are slept on. Mm-hmm. Everybody thinks they're all dry and just are regurgitating information. But you can tell really beautiful stories in history books. And this really just changed the dynamic of how I even felt about Native communities. So I think you're going to love it.
Okay. I mean, I had heard of it. I've never read it. But I had heard of it. I forgot where this was cited or mentioned before. But yeah, thank you. Thank you for these gifts.
Well, and on the basketball topic, I think we might have a strange connection.
Okay.
Going back to your Canisius days.
Okay.
Were you coached by Mike McDonald?
Yes.
Were you recruited by John Beeline at all?
Yes.
I was a manager for John Beeline at Michigan.
Okay.
From 2009 to 2013.
Okay.
And Mike McDonald used to work our camps in the summer.
Okay.
And I was
Coach
like,
Mac.
what are the odds that you played for them in the 90s? Like, that's crazy. So I thought that was really cool.
Beeline recruited me initially, and then he left, for Richmond. And then, Coach Mac took over, and that's who I played for.
Wow. Yeah. That's wild. I love reading your basketball tales.
Oh, I basketball, like, I don't really get a chance to talk about basketball that often. And so when I do, I try to have a lot of fun with it.
Heck yeah.
But yeah, it's funny. I was just talking to my dad about this, about Coach, I remember, I was in Canisius, and Coach Mac he was one of the youngest coaches in Division I at the time. He had a very young family, like young boys. And all those boys ended up becoming Division I basketball players.
Yeah. Themselves. I remember his son would come up to camp, and I'm like, he's way better, because it wasn't like the elite camp. It was just kids coming. I was like, this guy's clearly a coach's son. But it was just, it was so funny to think Canisius is not a well-known school nationally.
Yeah.
Kind of anywhere Beeline went then became part of his whole saga and myth of never being an assistant coach and all that. But before that, I was like, where's Canisius? This man's from Burt, New York. To think about you going there and being coached by them or recruited even, I was like, wow, and I was like, you must have been pretty good at guard if you were going to play the 2-guard offense at John Beeline.
Yeah, I mean, and it was the same offense. It was the same offense. The Coach Mac ran the 2-guard, interchangeable 1 and 2, interchangeable 3 and 4. I'll say that it probably wasn't the best fit for me.
As far as philosophy?
As far as philosophy. And the thing is, it worked, right? And they recruited players that fit that system. But, and this is something that, with the 50,000 foot perspective now of 25 years that I'm able to see, the ways that games are played today with a lot of screen roll, things spread out, that's probably more me. That probably be more my speed. But then, at least on a college level, that wasn't as prevalent. But again, I enjoyed my time at Canisius. I thought Coach Mac was a really good dude. I'm glad that I know that his Canisius career wasn't super successful, but I know where he's at now. He's won all types of awards and
I never even heard of it. It was like Damon College or something.
Yeah, Damon. Yeah, he's at Damon, and Damon's also in Buffalo. Damon College is also in Buffalo, and Buffalo is constructed very similarly, to universities to how Pittsburgh is. Yeah. Where Pittsburgh, you have Pitt, Carnegie Mellon, Duquesne, Carlow, Chatham, all within like a 2-mile radius of each other. Point Park also.
Wow, I didn't realize they were that close.
Yeah, and Pitt, Carnegie Mellon, Carlo, and Chatham are in the same neighborhood, like literally in the same neighborhood.
Crazy.
And Buffalo's not completely similar, but there are some similarities where you have Canisius, Buffalo State, Medaille College, and Damon College that are all close together. And the University of Buffalo is not really that far away, maybe like a mile and a half, 2 miles.
Well, I think McDonald also coached at Medaille College too at some point. Is that what it?
Well, wherever he
it's like he's done everything there.
Wherever he was at last, I know he had a lot of success.
I think he's still currently. I think he's currently at Damon, so I think that's where he's been.
Okay, so maybe it was Damon.
I'll have to look it up.
Yeah, but I know he's been pretty successful. I haven't talked to him in years.
Yeah.
But I've only been back up to Buffalo once since I graduated. Yeah.
Dang, that was what, 02 or 01?
Yeah, I graduated in 01, but I had the extra year because of the extra year. So I left Buffalo in 02. Dang. And I went back in 2019 as part of like my book tour stuff.
Wow.
But I haven't been back.
Yeah, it's just like you're the first person I've interviewed with a basketball playing background, and the odds that you were recruited by Coach B, I was like, I was looking at the years, I was like, there's no way. And so I haven't been back to Ann Arbor in a while, but if I go back for one of these reunions, I'll tell him that that I saw one of the former players he recruited at Canisius. Mm-hmm. And wow, yeah, that feels like a different life. I mean,
it feels, I'm 46 now. You know, that was over half my life ago.
Dang. That's cool. Yeah. I just thought with the basketball book.
So do you play, it's funny when you walked in or the way I was like, you've played basketball.
Me?
Yes. Have you?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I could tell.
Like I knew I wasn't going to be good enough to play at a school like Michigan, but I loved Tommy Amaker's teams back in the day. Even though he was just objectively mediocre, I thought he was cool. Mm-hmm. And I love Daniel Horton and Deion Harris, and especially the guys coming out of Detroit, especially, like those were my favorite players. And literally I would mimic their jump shots in Ohio as a little white kid, which is funny. But I was pretty good. I had a really verbally, emotionally abusive coach, and I'll put it on record, at Chaminade Julienne High School. In Dayton, Ohio. And like, I just couldn't do it, every day, like getting called just horrible names and just made to feel like shit every time I walked on the court. And even at that age, I feel like I had enough self-respect to say like, I got to quit. And so I transferred to a different high school senior year. I didn't play basketball, and I didn't want to even try to go to a lower level school. So that was never the goal. I was like, I'll work for Michigan, but we were also competitive as managers. Yeah. So we practiced a ton. We had access to this beautiful practice facility. So yeah, we hooped.
At every major school, the guys who are the managers, who are the equipment managers, or who, do the video, those are hoopers. Yeah. Right. Those are guys who hooped in college or hooped in high school, were probably really good in high school. Yeah. And just decided just to go to school or whatever and not, play like D2 or D3 or something like that. And just like, I'm just going to get my education.
I wanted to go to Michigan from the time I was a kid. Like we would drive up to football games. I go to camps up there. I just fell in love with Ann Arbor because my family's from Michigan. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I really wanted to be a good student too. So it's kind of a match made in heaven when Coach B got there, because I also wanted to be a coach. Like when I decided to not do that, I was getting ready to interview at Xavier for a GA job. Okay. That was my second favorite childhood team. People in Ohio hated me, Dayton. I loved Michigan and Xavier.
What year would you have been at Xavier? Because I have connections there too.
It would have been 2013, 2014. That would have been the first year. Okay. Chris Mack was still there. Travis Steele.
Okay. I'm trying to think where I know either Sean or Archie Miller coached there, or maybe is coaching there now.
Sean Miller was the coach there twice. Okay. Yes. So when I was a kid, then he left for Arizona. Yeah. And then he got fired because the FBI scandal.
Yes. Should have got arrested.
And then he went back to Xavier.
His assistants got arrested.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a whole nother.
He stayed free. Yes.
Could have a whole podcast about that. Yeah. I think he's so slimy too for the way he left Xavier the first time. These coaches, they just like don't even address their teams as human beings. And he did it again to go to Texas. Yeah. They lose in the tournament at Xavier. So Xavier gave him a second chance and he bails again. And I highly doubt he learned his lesson of whatever he did last time. Not to say I don't know Sean Miller, but I love those, like, what was it? Lionel Chalmers, well, David West and
and James Posey.
Oh my God, James Posey was my hero.
And they had the white kid with the hops. He was like a 6'7", 6'8".
Justin
like,
Dolman.
That wasn't his name. He was.
Okay, he didn't have hops. He was kind of a.
I forgot his name. Oh man, but I because we played against them. Canisius, we played against them. Also, so this is my connection. Is that my cousin David Young, who was a superstar, a couple years younger than me, superstar, went to Newcastle. Right, was first team All State like 3 years in a row. Went to Xavier. Didn't really play a lot. You know, he was there for like 2 or 3 years. He was like their ninth man or whatever. Transferred to North Carolina Central. Did well down there. Got drafted. Was drafted in the second round by the Sonics.
Wow.
Didn't make the team, but ended up playing overseas and for at least over a decade. Made some pretty good money. And so there's that. And then also the Millers. So if you're a Western Pennsylvania basketball person, then you know the Miller family.
They're royalty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
Beaver?
Blackhawk.
Okay.
Blackhawk. Right, it's in Beaver County, but it is called Blackhawk. And so Archie is my age, Archie Miller. And Archie was a guy that, I knew since, we were like 9, 10 years old, because I was also one of those kids who was that age doing all the drill for skill and the round ball, like all of that stuff. That was me at 9, 10, 11 years old too. And Archie was always just so advanced at that age. And then we get to high school and, I get a bit of a name for myself and, Archie's out there scoring all those points, whatever. And I hadn't played with him or against him in years.
Yeah.
And so white kid, 5'8", coach's son. There are stereotypes that, people from the city might have about a guy like that's game. And their prevailing notion was that he was overrated, right? It was like he's getting all this attention, all these, Power 5 looks and whatever. He's, you can't, he's not that good, whatever. Then one summer, I played with the Jots, Pittsburgh Jots, which was the main AAU team here in the area. And I played a couple tournaments with them, and one specific was the Columbus Big Time Tournament. And like the LA Rockfish were there with like Chris Burgess, who was the number one player that year, and also Baron Davis, who wasn't there yet, but obviously became Baron Davis. And there's other names I could mention. And Archie, this is my first time playing with Archie, seeing him face to face, and he's he's talking shit.
Dude, he's crazy.
He's violent. It's like he plays with violence.
Bro, I'm telling you, my ex-girlfriend said this about Jim Harbaugh when we would watch Michigan football games together. If he didn't have football, he would be a serial killer or something, right? Because that's how I feel about Archie Miller. That dude is so intense.
Yeah,
I'm not surprised that he was talking shit to all these people.
He played with like a level of violence that I just hadn't, and he's like this little guy.
So he got the respect.
Yeah, but and he's going at these nationally ranked. He was nationally ranked, but going at these other nationally ranked guards and pulling up from 30 and talking shit, and I was like, oh, okay. Yeah.
He was there to dispel notions.
I see. Yes.
No, he really could hoop. Because he played at NC State.
He played at NC State. Yeah. And he had some injury. He had injury issues and, didn't really have like the greatest career down there. He
does look like a candidate for someone that would be overrated, though.
Yeah.
And we do. I think sometimes that does happen. Mm-hmm. Coach B even recruited a few of those guys at Michigan. Not all of them came, but it's like, I think you might be putting this kid on a pedestal because of the coaching dad background and like technically very sound, can shoot, but playing against, Victor Oladipo is a totally different story. So, but I'm so glad you told that because someone else needs to understand, like Archie Miller was not.
He was a maniac.
Even as a coach, I worked UD's camps.
Yeah.
The same time I was working Xavier. I always wanted to work at Xavier. I didn't like UD as a kid. But I was like, all right, you got to throw actually Robert Morris too. I was working camps with Andy Toole. But off the record, I'll tell a story about Archie Miller that I was like, wait, this guy is absolutely the craziest coach and I've met a lot of crazy coaches. He's the craziest. So I was like, what is wrong with this dude? And how does he have this job? But he had some good UD teams. I mean, that brought the city back when they went to the Elite Eight. I mean, it's a good basketball town. And so got to give him respect for that. But yeah, I just love the basketball connection. I love talking hoops, even though I don't.
See, I don't get a chance to do this.
Yeah. I was so excited when I knew that you were like a real hooper too, like it's.
Do you still play?
No. When I moved, I did through my time in Minnesota, because I was at a Big Ten campus working and could always play. And now in rural Appalachia, there's just really nowhere to go. Like, I could hoop outside, but it's one of those things where I'm like, God, I'm in such bad shape now, basketball wise. Like, I can hike, but if I played basketball now, I might die. So I would have to like have.
I don't mean to laugh, but that's funny.
I would have to like have clandestine hoop sessions, by moonlight.
Yeah.
To not be embarrassed, because when you play basketball,
you have a pride thing,
and like, so then if I saw people like me getting 3 inches off the ground to lay it up, I would, I think that I have grown and matured as an adult, but then something like that. I could get so petty about, like, I mean, just not want anybody to see. I'm like, what's wrong with you? Just go play. And I'm sure there would be plenty of people that would. I could even go back to the university I was working at and try to hoop with students or it, but I'm just like, I need to.
Well, I was, if you said yes, I was going to, since you'll be here, I'm assuming you'll be here for tonight, or you're leaving tonight. Okay, so there's a regular game that I'll play on Wednesdays at the YMCA in Sewickley.
Dang.
And the thing is, I can't go this week because I have to take my kids to dance practice.
Okay.
But it starts at 7, and it's mixed group. There's guys that are around my age, our age, and some guys who are quite a bit younger. In fact, since it's the summer, there'll probably be more college kids there, like kids, home for the break, and some of the guys who play in college.
Oh wow,
there.
Okay, yeah.
And so it's. But the thing is, you have guys like that, right?
Yeah.
But then you also have and guys like me who I could still do stuff. Right, I'm good on offense. Defense, I can't guard those guys anymore.
Same, guilty.
I can't guard those guys anymore. But,
I don't even want to move.
But yeah, defense. I could do what needs done when I have the ball. Right, I've had to adjust my game to play more of like a grounded, like a current era Chris Paul. So I got a big butt, big thighs. I use that. So I got I have a lot of Chris Paul, a lot of Harden, like late stage Harden, some Luka. Okay. Like a 6'1", 200-pound Luka Harden CP3 hybrid. Just like slow, deliberate, but I get to where I need to go.
See, my theory is Luka started doing the D-cell when he put on so much weight that he couldn't dunk anymore when he got to because when you look at him as a rookie.
Yeah, he was banging on people.
I mean, straight up, jumping from like midway to the free throw line. This guy he was athletic.
Yeah.
And now I look at those highlights and I'm like, dang, did we just accept that Luka became this blob that has to do a D-cell slow-mo bank shot? I was like, you're not 40 yet.
Yeah.
Like if James Johnson is still in the league, then you should be able to dunk.
He's not in the league for basketball, James Johnson. No.
We were joking last night. He's like the Pacers' Udonis Haslem with no institutional history. Yeah. Like, why is he on that team? He's 38.
Because he's kickboxing champion. And no one fucks with him. That's why he's on. That's why he's still in the NBA.
I'm sitting here, it's like
no one will even bother to cut him because they're terrified of him.
He's like the player coach that doesn't even know any of these guys. He just keeps getting signed by Rick Carlisle. Yeah. So, well, anyway, I'm sure we could talk basketball for hours and hours and hours. And if I ever do come back, I'm going to try to line it up with Wednesday night.
And I wanted to get Hanif.
Give me a reason to train.
I was trying to get Hanif, but he was in and out. He came in the night we did the thing, and he's ended up, hanging out with a friend, and then left like the next morning. I did hoop with Joseph Earl Thomas. That's the first time we met. He did an event, City of Asylum. This was like 2022, 23, whatever, for his first book. Mm-hmm. And I had never met him, never met in person. And so our first meeting in person was at the YMCA right down the street. And we shot around. We played 2-on-2 with some people. We played 1-on-1. And then we did our book event that night.
That's tight. I lied. I have interviewed a Hooper before because I interviewed him at the Mississippi Book Festival last year.
Okay.
And I freaking loved God Bless You, Otis Spunkmeyer.
Oh, yeah.
That book is incredible. And I was like, wait, why is everybody taller than me at this? Because like Richard Grant, too, is like 6'4", and he wasn't a Hooper.
I mean, Joseph's like 6. He's not. He doesn't count. He's like 6'6". He's huge. Yeah, he's a huge guy.
And I was like, this, again, my ego gets in the way. Like back in the day, I'm like a small guard. The minute you see someone 6'5" standing over you at an AAU tournament, you're like, all right, well, I'm just going to pass the ball every time. But that's cool that, he's in this collection, this anthology, and that you got to hoop with him. Yeah, we're going to have to try to put that together someday. Okay. I'll find people to come back for, and we got to hoop. And then I'll go to those outdoor courts and turn on one of the street lights for the next however many months. Because the very least, my jump shot could save me. The other reason that I'm here, aside from basketball, is the fact that you have an anthology coming out on, is it June 3rd?
June 3rd. Yes.
Okay. That's how they get you.
Uh-huh.
An unruly anthology of Black American humor. As I said, blew me out of the water. And the collection was so oddly cohesive, even though these were very different types of contributions from all of these authors.
Well,
and
thank you.
Not all of you are from the same areas or parts of the country. Obviously, there are text message threads, there are emails, there are like legit essays and short stories. And yet somehow I came away from it. There was a few things that really stood out that I think made it work really well. And it wasn't necessarily even that obvious, because there's some things even here like contradictions that I noticed, but that also are like the good contradictions. So I want to talk about the book because I want to celebrate this, and I'm going to sell it to everyone I can at my bookstore.
Well, thank you.
Like, that's the most important thing for me. If you look at my staff picks at City Lights Bookstore, Sylva, North Carolina, this is going right on the staff picks when it comes into the store.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much.
The one thing that I want to talk about first is the way you frame the book. And I was trying to figure out how to answer this question without giving away the whole story, because I want people to read it instead of just us talk about it. But I think I found a way that we can kind of get there.
Okay.
So you say in the intro, I've forgotten where I came from. Well, maybe I didn't forget as much as I just didn't want to remember it. And then toward the end, you say, but mostly this book is a reminder to leave shame behind, to leave respectability behind, to leave the performance of what I believed would communicate intellect behind, and to take VAR with me everywhere I go now, to take the Kingsley van with me everywhere I go now, to take East Lib with me everywhere I go now. I mean, we're in your hometown. Yeah. So this is pretty cool to be able to talk about where this book came from. But the question I have, and it reminds me of Clenisha Sibley, this great playwright in Macomb, Mississippi. This always is stuck in my brain as a great question. She wrote a beautiful poem after the Dillon Roof massacre of the Black church when she was living out there before she moved home to Mississippi. And she's always thinking, well, why am I writing this? And why now? Why after 30 years did this little roast come back as such a powerful moment to the point that you would frame an anthology with it?
I was talking to a group of students about memoir, about writing memoir, right? Actually, no, not a group of students. I was part of like this book club. They invited me on, they had discussed my book, What Doesn't Kill You Makes You Blacker. And the host asked, like, how do you decide what makes it into a memoir? Because you have this entire life, a full life, and you try to craft the memoir, around like certain themes, and you pick the stories that fit the themes. And it's not an autobiography. You don't write everything, right? But you write the things that make thematic sense. And so this story with VAR just made perfect thematic sense for me, in a way of framing this entire book and this entire premise that Black American humor is the best American humor. And it's like, it's premised on a 13-year-old who is still the funniest person I've met in person, right? And I say that 30 years later. And he was someone who had all of the things that we generally associate with like highbrow, with intellect, with like a certain rigor and a certain craft with humor. He had all of that at 13, right? And some of the jokes that he would tell exhibited that. And it was like, okay, I have to tell the story about the instant oatmeal crib.
Again, right? You had me at instant oatmeal crib.
Yeah, I have to tell the story about the instant oatmeal crib because I could also frame it in a way where I discuss my own relationship with humor and also with shame. And, my essay, one of my essays in the collection, when I talk about my teeth, it's an essay about shame. It's an essay about kind of circumventing that and trying to get to the bottom of that and just figuring that out for myself. And so I think, and even when I taught humor writing, I had a 2-year residency at the University of Pittsburgh at the Honors College. Yeah. And for year one, I did a series of workshops. One of those workshops was humor writing. And one of the first lessons of that workshop was to just try to extract shame from yourself, from your writing, from your background, from how you feel about yourself. Because That's where the best humor is specific. It's weird. It's esoteric. And maybe you could write about the shame. Maybe you could write humor about the shame. But it's like, don't necessarily try to flatten yourself out to be more palatable or feel like the place that you come from. Oh, no one cares about this little farm town, or no one cares about this, suburban me. It's like, no, someone tell your specific story with your specific jokes and your specific sensibility. Maybe people will get it. Maybe they won't. But I'll tell you what they won't fuck with is you flattening that out and having some like universal fucking garden variety government. I was going to say government cheese because I don't know why that came to me. I don't know why government cheese was what I wanted to cite. But like, I'm just thinking of something that's just like boilerplate, whatever. It's like, nah, be yourself. Some people might not get it. That's fine. But the people that it'll make for a much richer experience for them, and also, most importantly, for you. And so that intro was me reminding myself of that, reminding myself of, oh yeah, that. And again, it compresses a process that, happened over years and happened years ago. But again, it was important for me to include that story, and also just to kind of let the reader know, okay, this is what you're in for.
As far as ways to frame an anthology like this, it was literally perfect.
Oh, thank you.
Because I think, despite this being a black humor anthology, and clearly you're very much driving home the point that even, right, Will Smith in Hitch is not black humor, right? that black people even included in a joke, that doesn't mean that it's black humor, but there are so many people that I think can relate to things in their life that bring them back to themselves and make you realize, like, yeah, I've built up all these things, defenses, like as a writer, I mean, you say intellectualizing things, right? And that would be a stand-in. But yeah, it's just like this book, you're like, okay, this is going to soar from here. It just opens it up and you're like, okay, let's dig in. But the interesting thing about shame, and we have to talk about this because I know it's a very important point for you in this book, it's everywhere. And not even just in the things that you write. I think I named, 7 or 8 different stories. And then even underneath some of that, there's shame. But the irony of this is the story with Var and the instant oatmeal crib is that he shamed someone.
Yeah.
In a way that actually was helpful.
Yeah.
And because there was trust. So you use a shaming joke to then open up a story.
Put it that way, yeah.
But I think it is important because right now, like I think about, there was the Karen Wright's story in this book. Yeah. I don't know if you're familiar with the story coming out of Rochester, Minnesota, of the white woman that's raised over $1 million after she called a 5-year-old the N-word.
Yeah, I heard about it. Yeah, did hear about it.
There are so many parallels where, like, we need to shame people again. Yeah. For things that are bad.
Yes.
And make them feel like, wait, if I continue to do this, I'm going to have no friends and no life. And I actually might even, have to move.
Yeah, the fucked up part about shame is that the people who experience it the most, who feel it the most, are the ones who probably should be experiencing it the least. And the ones who are the shameless ones are the ones who should be, who should have the shame, who should have all the anxiety, who should have all of the doubt, because you need to be a different person. You need to change. And so it's one of the, I guess, the great paradoxes with that particular sort of thing. Yeah.
You literally read my mind. I mean, because that's where I was going, is that these stories are so vulnerable from people that, shouldn't have had this shame. They were just made to feel that way by the world. Yeah. And so, like, whatever word you want to use, hiding, pretending, shrinking, all of these kinds of stories are in here. And it was just, so interesting to see that this joke that, hey, this guy's kind of shaming this person to help him out, But then it turns into like, okay, here are all these other stories where actually we need to rid ourselves because that's where our best selves, come from. But I'm curious how putting this project together, even before you got all these stories coming in, helped you with shedding that shame around who you are and where you're from. Because that was clearly, even in your memoir, a very complex topic.
It's interesting because there's a lot of directions I could have gone when deciding like who was going to be in this, right? And what type of work I wanted to be in this. Could I go in a direction where things are more just overtly funny, more overtly like slapstick, more overtly like, oh, okay, I see the humor here? Or do I want to have some of that, right? And there are some essays in there, some passages in there that qualify for that. Or do I want things in there that actually explore, I guess, the human condition a bit more, explore doubt, explore trauma, explore, shame, and also find humor in all of this stuff. Did you happen to watch I May Destroy You on HBO a few years ago by Michaela Cole? But you're familiar with that show and her work, and she is brilliant. She is, a tremendous writer, tremendous comedian, tremendous actor. I remember hearing an interview that she did, like a few months after the show concluded, where a person asked her, in the series deals with very traumatic subject matter, consent, assault. It's auto-fic in a way because she had gone through something similar in her own life. And the person asked her, it's like, so what makes you include humor and something like so traumatic? Like, what compels you to do that? And she replied, well, I don't insert humor. I just don't remove it. And I feel like that's almost like a guiding, like an anchoring thought when I'm thinking about, my relationship with shame, my relationship with humor, my relationship with even this collection and the essays that I wanted to get into this collection, where, I reached out to people and I told them, they asked, like, what do you want me to do? I was like, well, just be funny. And that was the directive that I gave them. You have no idea how many submissions that are in the book that I receive where the person said, it's like, I don't know if this is funny. I don't know if this fits.
Well, I mean, some of this is deep shit.
I don't know if it fits, but it's like, well, the way you tell stories, I know you as a writer. I know you as a person. I know that you can't help yourself. You can't help, but even if you're telling a story like Hillary Crossley Coker about a miscarriage, right, a very traumatic experience that you and your family went through, that you're going to tell it your way, that you're going to tell it in your voice. I know with, Alex Hardy, if you're going to tell a story about your grandmother in the kitchen, you're going to tell it in your way, and that you can't help yourself. You're just going to be funny. That's just the way you tell a story. Brian Broom telling the story about his relationship with his hair and also feeling out of place in black barbershops sometimes. I know that you're going to tell that story with humor. And the humor might not be obvious. You're going to have to actually do a deep read to see what is funny, but the humor is going to be there. And so I think that, maybe in a way, this entire experience and this entire just of corralling all these people and curating and editing, it's just been like a group therapy session while we all kind of just deal with all of our shames and come out the other side with these essays.
As you're speaking of all of these writers and saying it was just be who you are, this whole book seemed like you living out, and all of you living out together, that idea that your story matters no matter where you're from.
Yeah.
So the power in this book is going to come from all of you doing the particular stuff.
Yeah.
Just do it, be honest, shed the shame, let it rip, and then you're going to get this bomb-ass collection. And that's what it felt. It's like everybody kind of letting go together, as you're saying with the therapy. And it's just, I think that's why it worked so well, is it didn't feel disjointed despite the very different types of sections of this book. It just felt like you feel what's happening. And it was really special to read.
Well, thank you. And, I wanted people to write things that only they could write. And so, I have Cassie Lehman writing about toilets in West Virginia. You know what I mean?
and
writing it and taking the format. Yeah.
Black men?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Disha writing her bit about, family and the group text thread with the mom and, and that's something that she's going to write in her particular way. So even like Hanif's essay at the beginning, which isn't necessarily as overtly funny, but it's about the relationship between humor and grief and his relationship with his mother. His mother passed when he was very young. And it goes into some of the rules, some of the unspoken rules of playing the dozens.
Oh, yeah.
And we mentioned Joseph Earl Thomas earlier, and Joseph's piece about the grid. It's like, where is this? What is happening here?
I knew
Joseph is so.
I knew it was going to be out there.
Yeah, and Joseph is so absurd. He is so like his brain works in such mysterious ways, right? And I love it. And it's like, you just, with something like this, you want to get a group of great people together and you just want to just let them cook. It's almost like, we talked about basketball so much, but like Kyrie ISO. It's like, just let Kyrie cook.
Yeah. You're not going to say no.
Yeah.
You're not going to say, here's what you need to do.
Yeah. Just let him cook.
Yeah. It's your court. And I think that's what's cool is the freedom in this book. I mentioned Meredith McCarroll choosing Kiss A Layman's Heavy as one of her books on the bed. But one of the questions that she asked in that interview rhetorically that has really stuck with me, that came up again in this book, is she picked books, many of them that made her question, what is even a book?
Okay.
In terms of form. And that it can even seem random.
Yeah.
And that actually that can be a really good thing, that sort of freedom. So I'm curious, when you were having KSA do this email and then you have text message threads and all of these different types of stories, what was the thought process, or was there one, of how you were going to bring these all together and why you let it all these kind of diverse ways of telling stories come into this book?
So initially the scope was a bit larger, where I was going to include like tweets, just things that weren't necessarily essays, images, things of that nature. And that it just felt like a bit too ambitious. And so I kind of narrowed it down to having essays or essay-like substances. But even Kesse alluded to in his essay about how a conversation between us, where I told him one of his tweets about Trump was kind of like a guiding light for this, where he just talked about, Trump, big bootied, eats all the chicken, multiple baby mamas. It basically saying that Trump is what everyone feared the first black president would be.
Yeah.
Right. And there's so many layers to that statement. Right. And I thought, okay, this again is like I want the things in this collection to do to other people what that tweet did to me.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it. And I think it will.
I hope so.
I'm excited to see the reactions to these stories, because as a person who can't like obviously relate to some of them, again, I was still just laid out every morning, rolling laughing, but also particularly the barbershop story that really got me.
Okay.
I mean, I was choking up with that one.
Oh, wow.
Because, when you have experiences in life where you feel that fear of spaces because of, just the memory of what happened before.
Yeah.
Anybody can relate to that is going to be like, wow, But again, I appreciate the vulnerability of these writers and the obviousness of them just kind of saying, this is my story, I'm going to write it. Yeah. And that shame just happened to be a very strong theme that came up over and over again, in the way that the second theme I want to talk about kept coming up. And that is lying. I talked about this with Patrick DeWitt a few years ago, that his son was beginning to learn how to lie, and it was very exciting.
Yeah.
When you're a kid and you're like, wait, I can do this, and I can make it almost its own art form. But in this anthology, lying has two different sides to it. The exhaustion of particularly, I think, in Drive Me Crazy.
Yeah.
Which was...
Shamira Ibrahim.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, Shamira. The difference between the mom's lies of exhaustion, of just like, they were impulsive, they were petty, they weren't something that was going to really hurt anybody. And you talk about this in your story as well. There's a difference. And then her father's lying in this story is one where it's self-mythology to the highest extent that really fucks her up and the family. And so I'm curious if this role of lying was something that, again, was intentional, or if it just came out because all of you had experiences, is where, you said that all your father and his 5 brothers, that they were just absolute embellishing storytellers, but that you loved it.
Yeah.
Right. So talk about those different ways of lying and why that was important to include in here.
Just a really quick story. So a couple weekends ago, we went up to Newcastle, PA for my great aunt's 99th birthday party celebration. Wow. So I drove up with my dad and my kids. My wife had something to do, so she came separately, but she ended up coming later on that night. And so big ballroom, about 150 people there. I have a really big family on my dad's side. And at some point and there was a mic, and some people spoke, and at some point during the evening, my dad went up to speak. Okay, and did his thing. My dad knows how to. He knows how to do it. He knows how to make people laugh. He knows how to, say things with emphasis. Like he's really good at that. And watching that my entire life has definitely impacted how I tell stories, how I write, all of that. And so I was sitting next to my wife. I was like, look, when my dad is done, Danny, my dad's brother, my Uncle Danny, is going to go up and speak. Because I know it. Have you ever seen Bridesmaids?
Oh, yeah.
I remember the scene where, like, did competing.
I know where this is going.
Yes.
Yep.
Competing stories.
I love that scene.
And so my dad finished, and then here goes my Uncle Danny with his own stories. And then 2 people later, my dad went back up. Okay.
This is too perfect. So they're just,
it's like, okay, sure, this is what's happening now.
That is so funny. Because it's true. I mean, that's how it is with storytellers.
Yeah.
I mean, especially, look, I spent a lot of time in Mississippi, where they joke that storytelling is sport. But to think that happened at that celebration, it's like just take the context. It's even funnier that they just start going at it.
Yeah, and it's predictable too. Particularly, like my dad and my Uncle Danny specifically. Like, there's like they tell competing stories. I don't know how long they have, or if I just started to notice it. But within like the last decade or so, I've like, oh yeah, if my dad tells a story, my Uncle Danny's going to follow. If my Uncle Danny tells a story, my dad's going to follow. That goes without fail. So yeah, I think, so many of the writers, I don't want to make presumptions, but I will presume that come from like a similar sort of background with storytellers, with embellishers, and sometimes with Shamir's dad, it's like it's violent, it's dangerous, it's like it puts people in harm's way. But other times it's just you're just listening to your mom or to your friends or to your family tell stories and embellish and maybe lie a little bit. And it becomes a thing where you recognize the craft in it. Yeah. And as I mentioned in the essay that's specifically about lying, right? There's the Sam Jackson character in The Hateful Eight who,
oh my God,
who tells a lie that saves his life.
The Abraham Lincoln letter
he admits
thing.
to it. He admits to it. Like,
right.
Of course this is a lie.
Right. It's like that. Within your Pusha T reference, I was like, yo, this is exactly what I needed. Because that lie in particular is important to me and my best friend from Dayton. We knew Pusha T wasn't who he was or who he presented, but gosh, it was a good freaking front,
Yeah.
And so, like, his family's from near where Pusha and Malice grew up. Okay. So we would go, like, try to cop play clothes in the mall, see if we can see him. Actually, Ramika being a Risher says sometimes they still roll around and you see him in the neighborhood. But, like, the myth of these drug dealer rappers, that music was so cool to us. And so all these years later, when you reference it again with the, what was it, the Al Roker line.
Oh, yeah. So more, predict the snow like Al Roker.
Right. But yeah, between, like, those are just movie examples or music examples. Yeah. But lying can be really effective in terms of creating a story and a persona that actually, it doesn't harm anybody.
Yeah, it creates a mythology, and there's a rigor to it. And, you mentioned Pusha T. I mean, he's someone who's been a professional rapper for 25 years. There's no possible way you could have sold enough cocaine in the 3 years or however long that you were doing this to have 25 years worth of content to rap about it. But he figures out how to do it. He has figured out a way to make these stories about this subject matter fresh. Yeah. Even though it's going back to the same, 24-month period where he was doing that stuff.
And it's like, it's just as exciting every time.
Yeah.
Like, every time that he comes out with music, I'm like, I know what's coming, and I want it. Give me more. Yeah, it's so good.
And so, just to your, to answer your question, like, the lie is, it's even, when you, I was watching this thing, stand-up comedians. Chris Rock was one of them, and there were a few others, and they were talking about the craft of their work. Right. I forgot who said it, but one of them made the point that, the most effective joke is like 60% true. And then you say it, you drive it home, and then you move on to the next thing before someone has an opportunity to actually investigate whether or not it really holds water.
Yeah.
Right. It sounds good. It sounds great. You repeat it. You keep repeating it, and then boom, you move on.
Yeah.
Then boom, you move on. And so, yeah, I mean, there are embellishment is part of it. It's part of humor. It's part of writing humor. It's part of, the telephone gaming of legacy and archiving and just, telling stories and retaining those stories. And so I think I say I have a book trailer on Instagram. Mm-hmm. I say that this is a mostly true collection. And I think that's perfect. Mostly true. A collection of mostly true stories.
It is true that it just has to be mostly true, you know? And I was thinking about this. I was spending time. So there's an actor who played in Deadwood who lives in the town that I work in. Uh-huh. So I became friends with him because I'd interviewed his wife for a different podcast back in the day. She's an English professor. And I was like, wait, your husband, Sean Bridgers from Deadwood? Like, this is crazy. There's a line in that show where Jim Beaver's character is sitting at the bar with like the owner of the brothel and bar. And this is, Deadwood. It's frontier town. They're trying to he's trying to accumulate all this power for statehood.
Yeah.
And so he is, talk about an embellisher and just Ian McShane's character. And that's crazy. And so there's this one part where he's looking at him. He's like, I don't trust you, Swearingen, but I like the way you lie. And that's how I feel. Like sometimes, it's like, you just got to respect the art of it.
I mean,
and that comes through in this collection.
I feel, we should add a caveat because that same sentiment is probably how a lot of people feel about our current president too.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't trust you, but I like the way you lie.
It wouldn't feel so bad if that was not the case.
Yeah. And again, that's an example of where lying and embellishment is harmful and violent. When you have, a person who, who uses these embellishments and these lies to achieve a means to harm people.
Yep.
Right. And so, and I think the distinctions are they're not hard to make between the lies to kind of just part of storytelling or the lies to, to build your self-image to a point where you're able to harm people. Or the lies that are intended to harm people, and those happen too with this administration.
There's a big difference. It should be easy to spot.
Yeah,
but sometimes I think was this from maybe Angela's story? Quote: sometimes you just got to take advantage of someone's ignorance and make some shit up. It's like sometimes you just gotta. Or yeah, because it was the one where her mom said that David Hasselhoff was mixed.
Yeah.
When talking about being a mixed race kid and that complication. So it's just, I think the exploration of lying and shame in the humor is what makes this book really lasting. I'm going to remember these stories forever. And I just am on my first read through, So
well, thank you.
I really appreciate that. And to everybody that contributed to the collection. So now we talked about, your father and other storytellers that are influences. There are so many good ones in this book as well that are part of the anthology. Let's give you time to talk about the books on the bed that you chose.
Okay.
Because I'm very curious to see who you chose, because this could go a million directions given the fact that your life has been one that you consume a lot of culture. This could be all humor. This could be some serious, I don't know where it's going. So I want to give you time to talk about each of those.
So my books that are books that basically taught me how to write. And so these aren't current, I was going back and forth, but I want to name things that are more contemporary. And I like to do that because I feel like, oftentimes when writers talk about writing, we cite things that were written 30, 40, sometimes 100 years ago instead of stuff that was written yesterday. That could be really great. But, I was just really thinking about, okay, what are the books that I read, let's say between 13 and 20? That really, had an impact on how I've decided to write today. And I'll even expand. I'll say 13 to 25.
Okay. So what's the first?
First one is The Bluest Eye, Toni Morrison. And that's a book where I'd obviously heard of her. The first Morrison book that I actually tried to engage with was jazz. My mom had bought it. She bought it. I was probably about 14 or 15. And I saw my mom reading it, so it was laying around. I tried to read it, and I was like, I can't read this. This is too dense. This is. I don't know what this is. What's happening, right? This is a use of language that I don't know what to do with this. And so I finished jazz. I went back to it again, like when I was like 23, 24, I read it. But in between that time, I read The Bluest Eye. I was in college. And, one of the, I guess the most distinct and also just loveliest things about that particular book is that I had read it before I read it, because she was cited in so many rap songs. And I didn't realize it. I didn't realize it until I was like, oh shit, this is from Bluest Eye. There's a whole stretch in the Black Star album with Talib and Mos Def.
Yes.
Like the entire bridge of one song, Thieves in the Night, is from the Bluest Eye.
Yep.
Right.
And that's one of my favorite albums.
Yeah.
I love that.
And there were so many other instances of like, oh shit, this is from Toni Morrison.
Yeah, you're like, why does this keep coming up?
Yeah. And then I read The Bluest Eye, and I was like, oh shit, this is... And rap is another way that I learned how to write, listening to, I mentioned Talib and Mos Def. I don't fuck with Talib now. Yeah. Today, fuck him. But, and that can be on the record. Yeah. But, Inspector Deck, Everyone in the Woo, Mobb Deep, Ghost, who probably was like the person who, in terms of like how absurd that you can get while still staying somewhat off topic. Just having like the stream of consciousness, anxious, neurotic, descriptive vulgarity, and putting that to a beat with his extremely distinct voice. So Bluest Eye.
Well, and I want to say, I got to put a plug. Inspector Deck is one of my favorite MCs of all time.
Okay.
To the point that one of my friends in Detroit, he was like, because he's like, you have these crazy takes, like Inspector Deck is the best rapper in the Wu-Tang. You need to make...
That wasn't a crazy take.
You need to make a channel where then people... Because everyone's going to then come at you and say, no, it was Method Man, it was Ghost. And I'm like, but look, it's okay if you don't know anything about rap. It's fine.
It's okay if you have bad taste.
Deck, every single verse pretty much that I ever listened to, I was like, why is this not the front guy? Like, I mean, in terms of bars, he was second to none. So I really appreciate you saying that. And it's true, like hip hop, it was such a really cool way to explore worlds that are different from yours in the same that books are. Yeah. But it does teach you how to write. Yeah. Like if you pay attention, and there are so many literary references in a lot of these. Yeah, rappers' albums.
For me, it was actually kind of literal. Where I, when I started writing poems in college, and I mentioned
I love this story.
And what does a kid makes you blacker? I, wanted to impress a girl and didn't know how to write a poem, so I just went to the original hip hop lyrics archive and cut and paste some obscure Method Man. It is Method Man, so it wasn't even that obscure lyrics, and sent it to her as a poem, an original poem that I wrote.
I can't.
Right. And I did that. I did that a couple times. And then I started writing poems that were kind of mimicking Inspector Deck verses or Ghost verses or Raekwon verses, and basically just, beat for beat, like they'd have a verse and then I'd write a poem that was kind of similar. And then I'd transition into kind of, being more original. But, hey,
it was the launching point.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Gosh, I love that. And that's a good pick. Toni Morrison and Lucille Clifton are like the two biggest shares so far.
Okay.
For books on the bed, I think. Like the most, but none of them have been the same.
Okay.
Which is really interesting.
Okay.
So you chose a Toni Morrison, but one that someone else hasn't chose yet. So I appreciate that.
Okay.
Not that you have to do that, but it's interesting that there's been no crossover despite them reappearing all the time. Mm-hmm. So what about number 2?
Number 2 is The Things They Carried, Tim O'Brien.
Wow.
Yeah.
Tell me about why that.
Okay. So I read that in college, blown away by that book. Devastating. His work reminds me a bit of Cormac McCarthy. And how insane descriptive isn't necessarily isn't descriptive enough, but there's like a tactileness to their work and their writing where you can you read it and you are actually immersed in the experience of the author in a way that can be almost like disconcerting.
Yeah.
Where you're like, oh shit, I don't know if I even want to be here, but I'm here now. Kesse has that too. Kesse Lehman.
That's a good point.
With his work too, where it's like like a full immersion. It's like you're sleepwalking and then you wake up and you're in like 6 feet of water. And like, oh shit, how did I get here? And,
can I leave?
And can I even swim?
Yeah. How do I get out?
Right. And so,
do I want to?
And so, the things they carried, had that effect on me. And also, I create lists. I'm a lister, my work. Brian was the first person I saw who was like, oh, this person is a tremendous lister. He would start entire chapters. In fact, the things they carried is about lists.
Yeah.
It's a reference to the list of the things that they, that the soldiers of Vietnam would lug with them, while they were, going through Vietnam and, doing what they had to do.
Yeah.
These kids, 18, 19-year-old kids, over there in an unwinnable war for terrible reasons. And yeah.
I have a feeling that particular sentiment is going to be one that people hold on to, because I haven't had something described quite that way, of that immersion where you're like, do I even want to be here? This is disconcerting, uncomfortable, but yet that shows you how good they are. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting you picked that, because Jerry Wilson is the only other person that picked that. And she's an 82-year-old debut novelist from Mississippi.
Okay.
So I always find those things interesting to see where these influences come from.
I have two that I know no one else has picked.
Yeah?
That I will bet no one else has picked. The next one I'm going to say, I'm sure has been popular, but the last two, I'm going to assume I'm the only one who has picked them. And I'm not even picking them to be irreverent. I'm just picking them, and I'm thinking to myself, like, I don't know if anyone else would choose these.
I'm curious.
All right. The last one, definitely. The second to last one, people probably have, it's from a popular author, so whatever. Anyway, third book is Catch-22, Joseph Heller. First book that actually, other books have made me laugh before. That's the first book that actually induced a physical reaction where I threw a book across the room because it was that funny.
Really?
I just took it. I was like, I'm just throwing this. I can't even. Right. I forgot exactly what stretch in that book did that to me, but it was like explosive humor. That was the first time I read something that was explosively funny, and I wasn't expecting it to be funny. I read that and the things they carried. They were both a part of this same class I was taking at Canisius.
Wow. About
wartime literature. So All Quiet on the Western Front was also in it, and I forgot which other books, but Catch-22, the things they carried, I was like, holy shit. One, obviously it described the things they carried, but Catch-22, just the satire. And there's a character, Major, who I'm writing my first fiction right now.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And there's a character in the book that I'm writing, the title is Snowdrop. And there's a character in that book who is a version of Major.
Wow.
And I've been waiting 30 years to be able to write, 25 years, 30 years, however, to be able to write something where I create like a Major type of character.
Wow. Isn't it that's crazy that this joke from 30 years ago comes back, that influences the anthology. Mm-hmm. And now this time where you were like, dang, I'm laughing so hard I got to throw this book.
Yeah.
Is now influencing a character in your first fiction.
Yeah.
That's when it's good.
Yeah.
And often it's not the things you expect that are going to be the things that you carry with you through your whole life. And you're just like, okay, now I think I'm ready for that. Mm-hmm. And my designer for Story Made Project and Books on the Bed, he's going to be very happy with that pick because that's one of his favorite books.
Okay.
And also the design of the cover. So he's done a whole post about that.
Oh, wow.
That book on his Substack, which is pretty popular as far as designers go. So he's going to love that pick.
Okay. Awesome. All right. So Catch-22.
What about 4?
Number 4 is Killing Yourself to Live by Chuck Klosterman.
I have not read that.
Now, of the books that I've named, this is probably the book that I read the latest in life. So I was probably like 24, 25. And Klosterman became really popular like in the mid, in the early mid aughts for his criticism, his music writing. And, he was one of those people who other people referenced to make themselves sound cool or whatever.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Because I was like, who is this guy?
Yeah. And so I and the first thing I read from him was an essay collection, not Sex, Drugs, and Cocoa Puffs, that came later, but an essay collection that came before that. I forgot the name of it. And so, but then I went back and I read Killing Yourself to Live, which is about, he went to famous locations where traumatic music related stuff happened. So like maybe like a plane crash where like, maybe, I think maybe the plane where Buddy Holly or something. Yeah. I'm making this up, but this is what he did. There was like a really traumatic fire that happened at, this club where a band was performing, where like happened somewhere in New England where like 20 people were killed in this fire, and he traveled there and talked to people there. And the thing that, I don't know, sat with me about that book and Klosterman's work particularly is how specific his voice was and his humor, which was so like, was not overt at all. It was just in timing and in the construction of certain sentences and observations he would make. He's not someone who you immediately think of as being laugh out loud funny, but there's parts in all of his work that has made me laugh out loud. And also, his book kind of exists in that space between, is it true? Is this made up?
Yeah, the 60%.
Yeah. And that's something like, I think that was the first time I read a book that was explicitly where the author said, like, some of this is true, some of this might not be true, some of this is embellished, whatever. It's all in the same book. It's all in the same essay. And, Joseph Earl Thomas is someone who, I keep making these references, but is someone who, reminds me a bit of that, where he writes his work. It's like, how much of this is actually true? How much of this is actually happening? How much of this is embellishment? And also he is so specific.
Yeah.
And so detailed about things. And he doesn't necessarily write jokes or write humor, but the observations he makes are so deeply funny.
It's true.
It doesn't seem like he's trying to be funny, but he definitely is trying to be funny.
Yeah.
But he writes it in a way where it's like he's just telling a story.
Yeah.
But it's deeply funny.
That's interesting. I guess I had not thought of the connection between Chuck Klosterman and you or Joseph Earl Thomas.
I just literally thought of it just now. And you can see I have a few Klosterman books scattered here. I
think that's one of those, it was that era where I was avoiding everything people would not shut the fuck up about. Mm-hmm. And I remember my ex, who was great, and I read better because of her, but she read Sex, Drugs, and Cocoa Puffs, and it just seemed like one of those books I was like, this is making you annoying. Yeah. So I just like didn't read any Chuck Klosterman.
Yeah.
And now I'm like...
Well, so I think Sex, Drugs, and Cocoa Puffs is what I read first.
Okay.
Then I went back, because I think Killing Yourself to Live came before.
Yeah.
And then I went back and I read that. And,
I think you're going to help me give him another chance.
Okay.
With that. So I trust you. And
the thing is, I haven't reread Klosterman, or at least those older books in years. But yeah, if I'm telling the truth about writers who impacted how I write and how I think and how I put things on a page, he definitely belongs. I mean, Bill Simmons.
Yep.
I'm not going to name him for his book, but he's someone who anyone who was blogging in the early, people have their feelings about Simmons now, but anyone who was blogging back then definitely was impacted by Simmons.
Yeah, he was a huge voice, and I wasn't even a blogger.
Yeah.
So I can see that. Yeah, those like cultural critics, even if they have their lane that they're known for, like sports, they have like a very, very huge impact in how people write and think about anything.
And I was, at that time, I was reading more essays and criticism online than I was books. So even someone like Greg Tate at the Village Voice, and then later on, reading a lot of like Wesley Morris. And I read a lot of book reviews and especially movie reviews. Like Roger Ebert, I've always believed was he was a tremendous writer.
Yep.
A tremendous writer in the way that he could, get inside of what a movie actually meant and articulate that in a digestible way, and also in a way that maybe made you, think, oh, I'm not thinking about this the way I need to be thinking about this. This is an elevated, like he did the fusion of like accessible and elevated, which I think is something that a lot of writers aspire to.
Yeah.
And that's something that he was able to do with his criticism of movies. And so yeah, I particularly in that period from like 2003 to maybe 2012, I read primarily criticism, essays, reviews. Didn't read as many books, but it was...
That tracks, though.
Yeah.
Because you're really good at that.
Reading blogs and things of that nature, yeah.
Like, I feel like people who are your age then now would see you as that kind of voice.
I hope so.
Truly. So, yeah. What about number 5? Is this the one you said?
Oh, number 5 is The Broke Diaries by Angela Nissel. See? Yep. Told you.
Shout out, though, giving a nod to a fellow writer on the new Anthology.
Yes, and she is in the Anthology also. I read that when I was in college.
Wow.
And she wrote that about, it's a memoir in a way, funny essays about like her experience as a student at University of Pennsylvania.
God, I got to read that.
And she had no money. And so she's just single Black woman, student, young, writing, these essays about just her experience. And they were so funny. It was so deeply funny. And I think that actually springboarded her to like being able to write for TV, because she was a writer for Scrubs, and has written for various other shows, and that's what she does. She writes TVs and TV shows and movies now. And that was the first time that I read a thing and I developed like a writer crush. Yeah. Too. I was like, I have to, like, I didn't feel like I had to meet Toni Morrison or Joseph Heller or Tim O'Brien. I was like, I have to meet Angela Nissel. Okay. Isn't
that funny? Yeah.
Yeah.
How cool.
Yeah. And and the thing is, we've met before, years ago, and, whatever. And we're definitely cool now. I mean, again, she's in the Anthology, but yeah, The Broke Diaries. And it also was a book that was written almost like a journal, which I hadn't seen at that point. I hadn't seen a book constructed that way, where it's it felt like essays that I could have read, and like, I don't think Tumblr existed at that time, but it felt like essays I could have read on Tumblr, but it was a book. And now, like Samantha Irby, who, is a tremendous essayist, she is someone who kind of writes in a similar manner, where these essays, I could see someone coming to Samantha's work and be like, oh, I didn't know that you could write books like this. I didn't know that you could say this in a book. I didn't know that you could create essays, construct essays like this. I thought essays had to be so like academic, and this person went to this MFA and, whatever. And Samantha's work is brilliant, and she writes in a very vulnerable and accessible way. And Angela Nissel was the first person that I read that wrote in a way like that. And that also is, one of the many reasons, one of the many influences for me to be as vulnerable as I attempt to be, when I'm writing about myself. Because it's like, no one gives a shit about like where Damon Young went to school or where he lives or whatever, but people might care about my anxiety, or might be able to connect to some of the vulnerabilities, some of the self-consciousnesses, some of the fucked up shit that I've done, and, my exploration of that, and, whatever. And so that's the shit that connects people.
Man, it's so cool that Angela's in this and was such a big part of your opening up. Yeah. I love when those connections happen, and then you get to meet them in real life.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if, even just briefly, so that we can keep the 6, because that's what...
So my last thing will be, I guess, a bit of an irreverent choice, but it's Ghostface Killah's Supreme Clientele, which I believe is the greatest rap album of all time.
Wow.
Yeah. Greatest solo rap album of all time.
It's so good.
I was a fan of Ghost, but I will say that when I was first introduced to the Wu, and this was, I would say, like 94, 95. When I came to the Wu, GZA just released Liquid Swords. So this would be 95. And when I was first introduced to them, my favorites were Meth. Meth was just the easy choice because he just had the most distinct voice, and he was so accessible. Meth, and then I really liked RZA. at first. And Ghost was kind of in the Ghost, Raekwon, INS range where I liked them. Obviously, I love them all, but they weren't like my immediate favorites. And then something happened over the next couple of years where Ghost and Inspector Deck kind of just rose above the rest for me. And then with Supreme Clientele, that was, again, I had the same experience listening to that album that I even described, with reading, the Broke Diaries, where you're like, oh, I didn't know that an album could be constructed. I didn't know that a song could be constructed this way. I didn't know that you can do this. I thought you had to keep on task or like these references in this language that these non sequiturs that don't seem to make sense, but they do. They create this tapestry.
Yeah.
Right. And Ghost, if you hear him talk about Supreme Clientele now, he will tell you, yeah, I was cooked up. He talks about that, about being bipolar and how that also contributed to like just the randomness of that album. But it's funny, my two favorite rap albums, and rap albums I think are the two best of all time, are that and My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy.
Wow.
Which, have a lot of similarities.
Yeah.
And also a lot of similarities in terms of the person who created these albums, having their mental health issues and being very vocal about them. And, Kanye has obviously gone Nazi or whatever the fuck he's on right now. Right. But for me, there was always like a very direct through line from Supreme Clientele to Kanye's work, particularly My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy and Uses. Those all like exist. Yeah. And they're the same, whatever. And it just was an album that just made me reimagine what you could do with a word, what you could do with a sentence, what you could do with a stanza.
Man, Ghostface opening doors.
Yeah.
Like Angela, like all these writers. I think I'm glad we did an album because it can have just as big an effect on someone who's writing essays or even a novel. And it's just the things that keep coming back to you. And it seems like, I'm just glad that someone shares in my love of Inspector Deck and Ghostface. It's so great.
And the thing with INS, like if you listen to all of like the songs that when people think of the quintessential Wu-Tang songs, Triumph, Cream, Protect Your Neck, Inspector Deck had the best verses on. Those are the verses that people remember from all those songs. Yeah. Everyone knows the first verse from Triumph. Everyone knows INS's verse on Cream. Everyone knows Inspector Deck's verse on Protect Your Neck. He's the first one. And they recognize like, this guy has to be first for a reason.
It blows my mind that people can't see this. Mm-hmm. He is the one, and no, don't get me wrong, they're all cool in their own way. And especially Method Man, as you said, because he's the most relatable and he's got a dope voice and it's smooth. But like Inspector Deck, as far as MCs go, he influenced so much of just my life because of how freaking good he was at rap. I'm like, if I can get as good as Inspector Deck is at rapping at anything, I'm like, I'm good in life.
Yeah. What hurt him, I guess in that, in those like larger conversations is he never had a great album.
I know
his first album was one of those like casualties of like the flood, when RZA's place got flooded and I guess he had beats chosen for the next several albums and he had to like redo things or whatever. And I think INS's album was one of those that got, unfortunately caught up in the mix. And so the album that was released, it just wasn't great.
I know.
It wasn't. Comparing it to like to Liquid Swords or to Supreme Clientele or to Iron Man or Only Built for Cuban.
Yeah, it felt unfair.
It just didn't.
Yeah, he was never going to live up to those albums where, those solo albums.
And it was a good album, but it just, when you're comparing it to the other solo Wu albums at the time, it
wasn't one you were going to choose for a conversation like this.
Yeah.
And that's sad because I think, he needs more respect.
Yeah.
And I intend to give it to him at every chance.
I mean, I think, let's give them his flowers right now.
Yeah. So, well, this was awesome. I love these books. I love talking about your book. I loved reading this anthology and just, when you see the people on this tour, tell them I said, thank you. Because my last few weeks have been much better reading this book. And like I said, I'm going to try to push it through the bookstore as much as I can to anybody I can. And I already have someone I'm going to give it as a gift for Books on the Bed.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you. This has been great. It's great meeting you. And hopefully the next time we see each other, it'll be on a basketball court.
I got I got to get back on the court at least one time
Okay.
before then. But yeah, let's do it. Let's hoop.
Okay.